Welcome to the So You Want to Compete webinar with our host, Corey, and myself, Stacia from Strength and Grace Promotions, and Victoria from Fit and Furious. Just so you guys know, So You Want to Compete is a community for our competitors. It's built for education. Normally we do things live and in person. Well, now you got us live and online. We migrated everything to webinars, and we have different guests each week. So today with us, we have IFBB Pro and Head Judge Becky Clawson. Thank you for joining us.
Happy to join.
Thank you. So how this works today is Corey's going to be chatting with Becky about all things women's posing. So we're talking about all the different divisions, not just your bikini or just figure, it's everything. Victoria's keeping us on time and managing all the cool swag that we have from sponsors. You have to be either on the Facebook Live or in the Zoom meeting in order to join us and be eligible for sponsor stuff. And I'm going to be running all things technology related, so the Facebook Live and the chats. So post your questions in the chats, either on Facebook Live or in the Zoom meeting. And I think this is what, our third event, and we're going to keep going until we no longer have to, or we run out of things to talk about, maybe, I guess is what we're going to do. We're having a lot of fun when learning so much how to share our passion with this industry with you guys. And we are going to hit a record high. So this is going to be crazy because we now have 64 people participating. So again, I am keeping all of you on mute. So if you have a question, you have to put it in chat. We have upcoming Mike Davies Fitness Factory joining us. We're going to have Tony Roberts talking about the men's posing. We'll have hair and makeup coming up. So all sorts of fun things. So I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to Corey, Victoria, and Miss Becky. And please don't forget to ask your questions.
So big thing is, just so you guys know, the lineup coming up next is next week will be Tony Roberts. If you don't know Tony Roberts, he is the expediter extraordinaire. You've seen him at the Arnold, you've seen him at the Olympia, but Tony's also comes from a background as a competitor and really knows the ins and outs of men's posing. So all of the girls on here, let all your guy friends know that they are up next week. So it is all for them next week. So we're doing the same thing for them. And then the week after that, we're going to have Mike Davies. And so he is going to be talking about home workouts, staying on par with your nutrition. So you're going to have to be really honest about what you're eating when he comes on board for that. So for today, we just wanted to kick everything off. Thank you, Becky, so much for being here. I have known Becky, gosh, we're going to date ourselves by saying everything, but
I know.
Speaking of Mike Davies, Becky and I got started back in 2005, 2006 is when we first met training with Mike Davies. And it's great now because Victoria now trains with Mike Davies. So it's kind of, he's had an inspiration in a lot of our lives. But what we wanted to do really, Becky, is just ask, we're so grateful for all your posts on Facebook, on Instagram, just keeping everybody kind of in the loop as to what's going on. I know there's a lot of questions. Our webinar got started because it was a what now? We started it because all the shows started getting canceled, they started getting postponed, and we had all of these competitors that were just, freaking out saying, oh my gosh, now what do I do? I've worked so hard for this, and where am I at? And so just really wanted to get from you a pulse, because you know the Manions, because you're close with Gary Udit, just kind of what's going on, what to expect, what to look for, give them the updates as to where to find all the information that they're really looking for.
I think the best way to stay on top of it is following the social media of like NPC News Online, IFBB Pro League, turning on post notifications. I actually do that myself because even if I hear something ahead of time, like you wait until like the official notice is out there. Like I usually wait till it's out there before I discuss it with anyone, just because all the details are in their posts. And as everyone's probably seen, especially this last week, they've been coming fast and furious. Like some stuff is canceled, some stuff is postponed. Like the Toronto Pro, for example, is canceled, but the Pro qualifier will be held just later in the year. So there's a lot of stuff they're figuring out right now. And as soon as they figure it out, they put it online for everybody. They're working on this every single day because everybody has so many questions. Like last week, I did something on my Instagram, just letting people ask, what they're concerned about, what's going on. And I think some of the stuff we just don't know yet. Like people are asking, will my eligibility carry over into next year? Like if the season gets cut in half, what happens with my eligibility? All that stuff will be addressed. I just think they are kind of taking it moment by moment and addressing the most important things at this point. From what I understand, we are all planning on kicking the season off, hopefully May 23rd, that weekend. I'm hopefully slated to do a pro show in Salt Lake City that weekend. So We're hoping everything goes then. And if anyone saw the post on the Team Universe, or sorry, I'm old school, I call it Team Universe. It's NPC Universe now. Don't get caught saying that. I'll probably get a smack on the hand for that. But they are saying that if you need to requalify, there should be a few shows leading into that July 4th weekend where you can actually qualify to do a national show. And from what I gathered, since I know people will probably be asking, I think you just had to have competed on a national level since January 1st, 2019. And then you're qualified to do the national shows. So it's not like you even had to be in like the top 2 of a local show. If you did a national show last year in 2019, all the way up to now, you can do a national show. So I think that's very good. That should open the doors for a lot of people and reassure a lot of people that when these shows do start up again, that they'll be able to jump in.
That's great to hear. It's really helpful. In terms of, I know a lot of the competitors that are on here really want to know about posing. They're here for posing. They want to know some of the posing tips and stuff. So let's just kind of run down. If we start with, let's start with bodybuilding and women's physique. What is, so for people looking at, what are the changes that have recently occurred, or what are you seeing that are tips that you can give people in terms of, you know, do this, but maybe don't do this?
I think this is actually an area I think that women's physique and bodybuilding does pretty well, but it's super important, is posing conditioning. Being able to hold your poses for an extended period of time without starting to sweat, you know, starting to shake up there, starting to breathe heavily. Conditioning is a really big part of those 2 divisions. Obviously, we're looking for a tight waist, you know, especially in bodybuilding. You know, we've heard over the last, you know, how many years, you know, no bubble guts. You know, we don't want to see like a distended midsection. So having that abdominal control is really important. And practicing, and I think a lot of bodybuilders do this. It's more old school to do it anyway, but they practice posing, you know, for a good 20, 30 minutes a day going into shows. I know some athletes that will like hold a vacuum or whatever during commercials when they're watching TV and things. And I'd say that's really important, being able to actually hit your poses and hold them. So your conditioning is really important.
I think that's a great note too, especially when people are talking about what they can and can't do at home working out. Just go through your poses. It's amazing how if you do your poses, you know, you always go to a posing clinic and the next day you're super, super sore. And that's something really to take away, is because you're actually working all those muscles as you go through those different poses. So let's talk about figure for a second. Anything new coming up with figure, or anything specifically with the figure girls for them to watch?
I don't think there's anything too new about it. I think the point of figure is to be graceful and fluid in it. And I've loved seeing over like the last 10 years how it's evolved from just very basic presentations, you know, side, front, back, side, whatever. You kind of have a little bit of style and just individuality that you can put into it. And I like to see that. I think some girls put in some really pretty poses that really show off a really nice physique. Like I think it's Boyana that did the Arnold. I can't pronounce her last name, so don't ask me to, but tiny little figure competitor. She does a real pretty pose from the back where she has her hands on her hips and her hips are kind of to the side. And it just shows such a pretty like hourglass shape. I like that. And I think that, you know, having even different transitions and stuff in figure can really make you stand out up there. You know, get your mandatories down, but if you can put a little bit of own personality into it, I think that helps you look more feminine and makes you stand out to the judges. So that's something I would work on.
I think that's great to hear too, because I think a lot of times figure competitors will say, I've heard females say, well, I don't know if I want to do figure or if I want to do bikini, because I like bikini and it's the poses and I like the differences in it. And I've told a lot of people that some of those figure girls that actually will put in a little bit of that swag from bikini or a little bit of that fluidity, it just makes a difference and it makes such an impact. And I think that's the key, is that on that individual presentation, you can add a little bit. And I think it's, we've always heard in Gary's seminars too, help us pick you.
Yes.
Those little things that stand out that you're still, you're doing everything that the NPC and the IFBB wants, but it's help us pick you, which really makes a big difference, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then let's talk about bikini for a minute. I know you are, all over bikini with, should we all do this little pose right here? What is it now? What is it now called? The teapot? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's give a little bit, some rundowns on bikini, because I have a feeling we have lots of bikini competitors joining us today.
Yes. The teapot pose, thank goodness, that actually got written into the rules that we don't want to see that. That was originally part of the wellness guidelines for posing, that they absolutely did not want to see the arm bent and out to the side. And they've added it to bikini, which I think is great. I don't think it's a super flattering pose. I know there's a lot of posing coaches out there who teach it, but I think it's awkward. I think I've heard different things, like they're saying to do it like to make the shoulder pop a little bit more, show a little bit more shape in your shoulder. But you can do the same thing. It's about like your shoulder position versus your arm position. Like your elbow does not need to be bent in order to show like roundness in your shoulder. Somehow that's gotten out there and people are doing it. I think also the thing that makes it look awkward too is when their hand is like turned up, like it's facing like the sky. Hand should be turned down, wrist should be turned down. It just looks more natural and more effortless, which is the idea of posing. It's supposed to be graceful and look very effortless, even if you're posing really hard or doing whatever. So those are good things to remember. Also, keep your hands kind of like below your waistline, like your natural waistline. I think that's a good call. Like I saw some people were posting on social media photos of like Olympians and stuff with their arm out to the side. And it was kind of crazy because anyone who had their arm out to the side at all, it was below their waist and their wrist was facing down, and it was totally inappropriate pose. Or somebody happened to pick one of their transition photos and post it. And so clearly they weren't standing there and they were moving to something else. And you can totally move your arms and do whatever you want to in your transitions. The idea is just not to stop there and hit that pose and have that be your final pose. I will say that we had at the Arnold Amateur, we did have someone who was in a first call out and she had her arm out that way and it totally blocked the girl next to her. And it wasn't a point where we couldn't judge, like we could see what was going on, but it was just so odd. Like, that's a stage where everyone's packed. There were so many girls in those classes. You've got 8 people across, like you're kind of close and you kind of need to adjust to make sure everyone fits. And this girl's arm was like literally across the girl next to her, like right across her midsection. And I think she just didn't know what to do, didn't know to bring her arm down, didn't know any other pose. So she just stood there like that. And that just looks really funny in photos. It's really distracting for judges. Like I said, not that we can't judge around it. It's just, it doesn't look the best on stage. So that's just another reason that we wanted to get rid of that pose.
Okay, and what we have a couple questions that are coming in based on before we move to bikini and wellness, so we'll do that. But real quickly, let's go ahead and give out a sponsor prize, and then I'll ask these couple questions. So Victoria, who we got?
We got Beauty Gallery with the lipstick, eyeliner, and hair products. Some samples from a company called Pharmacy. And Annette Rodriguez will be sending the gifts out.
Awesome. So we have 90 audience members today. So Corey, pick a number from 1 to 90.
Oh, I get to have really my choice of numbers today. I'm still going to go with 13 to start.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Jess Falburn, Women's Physique. So Jess, you will need to send me a message with your contact information so that I can get it over to Victoria and we will get that taken care of. So back to you guys.
Okay, so a question that I have, and this goes really close to what you were just talking about, Becky, is from a judge's point of view, how important is it for the athlete to hold their poses while standing on the diagonal lines?
I'd say it's pretty important. You can always switch. I know you get tired up there, and I know like your foot might fall asleep, your back hurts. We've been up there, you know, like you start to get pretty sore when you're on the diagonal. You can absolutely move. You don't have to be frozen in place, but all of like the arm waving and constantly like turning, like I see people almost like fidgeting and stuff, that's distracting. I would avoid that. But yeah, if you've got to switch to another side or move to another pose, that's totally understandable.
Okay, great. So let's talk about wellness for a moment. Talk about kind of the misconceptions from wellness. And, you know, it is such a bummer because we were so looking forward to kicking off the 2020 season with wellness, and it's kind of been put on hold right now. But if you could kind of just talk about, I know, you know, we've all heard it, that wellness is a softer bikini competitor. I mean, you've heard all the stuff out there. Everything I've seen from the wellness competitors that we have seen from kind of the IFBB Pro League and from, you know, around the world, they're absolutely gorgeous. And, you know, it's definitely, it is anything, you know, so far removed from any other competitor that is a softer version of figure or bikini.
Right. And that's probably my least favorite myth about wellness out there, because these girls are in great shape and definitely as conditioned as a bikini athlete. And I think sometimes they look a little more conditioned because they have more muscle, but they're definitely in shape. Like there's low body fat on these girls. The difference in why it's not figure is because there's no like significant demarcation. There's, you know, their glutes aren't etched in, they're not striated. They may have a little bit of separation in their quads just due to their development, but it's not a deep separation. So that's where it doesn't get into like the figure territory, but it's definitely as conditioned as bikini. And I really do think that like the ideal for the division is probably the girls that we've had win pro cards so far. Those are a really good reference, and really the overall winner at the Arnold Amateur is kind of been considered what we're going for. Sandy's been sharing like some of her photos and posing videos as like an idea of, you know, what to aim for our US athletes. And to see her in person, she's really very stunning. She has upper body development, a little bit more than a bikini athlete, but definitely she's not hard or striated in her shoulders or anything. She has a very tiny waist, a nice tight, tiny waist, and awesome leg development. Great curves. She's got glutes. She's got hamstrings. She's got quads, and a really, really feminine presentation. Like her hair was very pretty, like pretty styled, pretty makeup, pretty suit, like all of that was super feminine. And to me, that's the ideal. Like they've got muscle, and those girls have got some serious leg muscle. And especially if you see them, like even in the off season, they have significant muscle, but it's feminine. Like just their shape and the way they present it on stage is very feminine. So that's kind of the ideal.
So when we start talking about that, so when we've mentioned kind of posing in general, so got a question, a salute before and after routines, necessary or not necessary?
I mean, I guess it's typical that people do it, but no, I don't think that you need to absolutely like raise your hand or anything. Some people just hit their last pose and that's it. And they just kind of walk off to the side. So I think the big thing is don't do a salute if it's going to be like awkward. You know how some people think they have to do some kind of salute at the end of their routine, and they'll like bend down really low at the knees. And I almost fear that they're not going to make it back up because they're dipping down so low. And like, you know, don't make it such a big grand gesture. It doesn't have to be that, but I would say like watch some of the pro routines. Some of them don't do one at all. And I think that's totally fine.
I think it's great to mention. Question we also have about is difference in the suit. So kind of understanding, we know the figure suit, we know the bikini suit, kind of where does the wellness suit fall into that whole parameter?
So the bikini tops for wellness are pretty much the same as the bikini tops. Like they do not connect to the bottoms. So it's not like figure in that regard. You will see some of the girls that are competing, like from Brazil and such, they have tops that are almost like underwire and they're a little bit more molded. That is totally fine. If that's what you want to wear, you do not have to though. You can wear like a regular bikini top. For the bottoms, you can wear either the bikini bottoms, like with the connectors, like the rhinestone connectors on the side, or you can wear bottoms that have fabric on the side, which are more like a figure bottom. But again, they don't connect to the top. I think it's just a preference. There are girls who wear both and they look totally fine. I do think that wearing the suit bottoms like higher on your hips is going to be more flattering, especially for girls with more muscular legs. So that might be like a deciding factor. Like if someone's deciding to go maybe from bikini to wellness, like, does my suit fit me the way it needs to? Does it sit up high enough the way it needs to? I like the fabric bottoms myself. That's what I was used to wearing for figure when I had more muscular legs. I think it's very flattering. And I've seen some designers that are kind of trying to come out with like kind of a hybrid type suit to flatter that body type. But really, I think the first year, like if you have a suit that meets the requirements and the criteria, go ahead and wear it. You know, you can always get something new later. Unless the suit was inappropriate, it's not going to like kill you on stage. As long as it is the type you're supposed to be wearing and it's not too small, I think you'll be fine.
So another question is, how do you make that decision of going from bikini to wellness? And would you recommend somebody maybe cross over if they're not quite sure where they fit and compete in both bikini and wellness, given what you've kind of talked about with the suits kind of working together? Or should they stick to just one this year?
I say on the local level, yeah, heck yeah, I would cross over. I remember when bikini came out, and even when men's physique or when classic came out, we had people crossing over like crazy because they were just trying to find which division they were right for. So I absolutely would. If you're going to get on stage, might as well get up there and get compared with different body types. Like sometimes just the pictures of the comparisons tell you where you need to be. Like if you look really thick, like your legs look really thick compared to the bikini lineup, that might be your answer. If you look a little slight compared to the wellness lineup, then that might be your answer to stick in bikini. But I feel like every time we introduce a new division, we see a lot of crossovers. And I kind of think that's the general idea. Like test it out and see, maybe you do belong there. And maybe, you know, you'll get some good feedback that that's the division you should try.
Okay, another question to go along with that. Do both feet have to be on the line for wellness front pose, or is it okay to have one foot a little more back? What's the ideal wellness front pose?
I think that's fine to have one foot a little bit slightly back. Like you should be like squared up and centered and facing forward. Like there is a true front pose for wellness. But I think I know what this person's referring to. And your feet are kind of staggered just a little bit. It just kind of highlights that X or that hourglass shape. And that's totally fine. As long as your hips are squared forward and you're not doing like a total side pose, I think that's totally acceptable.
So then the question would be, is the number stay on the left hip for wellness?
That's a good question. Yes, I would leave it on the left, especially because in their presentation, they can do, you know, different poses. They can do different side poses if they want to, but we're going to be quarter turning them in comparisons. So they'll be facing straight on. So we'll see it. And then they turn to the side and then turn to the back and everything. I don't think we're going to have the issue seeing the numbers in wellness that we do in bikini, where it needs to be on a certain hip, because it feels like in bikini, most girls will face one hip forward all of the time, whereas wellness has to A, turn all the way around, and B, they have to face forward at some point. So I think we're probably going to stick with the left hip.
And then with that, so talking about, since we've kind of talked about all of them, for girls that are looking at considering suits, so got a couple twofold questions. One is colors of suits. And then the second one would be, is it necessary? Let's say you've got a great suit and you've won your local amateur show. There's a lot of talk about, oh, you're going down to nationals, you have to have a brand new suit to go to nationals. So if you could kind of talk about those two, suit colors, and then really when you have to buy that next suit.
Suit colors, it's always good to stay in like the jewel tones. I know that everybody says that, but it is so true that the colors that are most flattering on most people, especially with the tan, are like purples, blues, greens, reds. Colors like that will stand out against any background and generally don't blend in with the tan. Risky colors are, of course, pastels, white, silver, black can be risky. It can stand out on stage, but sometimes like a lighter or a brighter color will pop a little bit better than black. I think one example I think of is Hannah Ranfranz. And she just recently won, I don't remember, towards the end of the year, she won a show. And she's a bikini pro. And she wore black for much of the season. And I actually thought it looked pretty good on her. She changed her suit to a bluish color. And it was lights out. It looked great on her. It just made her stand out a little bit more. So I think that's kind of where you might run into an issue with black. It looks more like just a solid color. It doesn't always shine as much. So I'd say stick to colors. Yellow and orange are dicey and difficult to wear. Not everyone can pull that off. I've also recently had questions about patterns, wearing patterns on bikini suits, and I don't suggest that either. It's just more distracting than anything. So I would stick to, again, the jewel tones, the bright colors, and kind of go with what goes with your own complexion. Like, what would you wear normally? Out of those colors, what would you wear? Like me, I'm not really like a red person. Like reds don't look great on me, but blues and greens do. So I would pick maybe one of those. One of my suits was a pink suit, but it was a dark pink and it was kind of like a foil material. So it had black in the background of it to darken it. So it almost looked like purple on stage. So that's my suggestion for colors. Now, needing a new suit and when to get a new suit. One of my favorite stories to tell is that Ashley Kaltwasser wore her same suit. I know she wore it from her pro card win all the way to the Olympia. And that thing was like falling apart. Like trying to tie her suit ties, they were like shredding, like the thing was on its last legs. And she had sent it back to her suit maker to have some extra stones put on it, but it was essentially the same suit. And she wore it as an amateur as well. And you guys probably remember for a long time, her in that green suit, that was her look. That was her signature look. And if you've got something that's working, I say stick with it. I wore my suits for a while, you know, if they really fit me well, and I was getting good feedback as far as like my critiques on stage and stuff, just keep wearing it. I really love the option that some designers are giving you. Like if you buy a suit and you want to add crystals later on, they'll help you, you know, bling it up more. You can send it back to them and they'll add more stones to it, which is so much cheaper than buying a whole new suit. I also hear from newer competitors, they think that they have to have a new suit for every show. And I kind of wouldn't do that. I would try to stick with something and find like your look and make it work, to kind of keep the variables at a minimum. Like if you're not getting critiqued that your suit doesn't fit right, or it maybe flatter you, or maybe it's the wrong color, then I would keep wearing it. And that's what feedback I try to give. Like if I see a suit that is ill-fitting or is maybe just not the right color, I will say it in my critiques. And if I say it's good, I would say keep going with it.
Awesome. It is time to do another giveaway. Victoria, who we got up next?
21-day detox from Strength and Grace Fitness.
Awesome. So we are now at 114 between the two. So Corey went through 114.
Let's do 113.
All right, that means I have to scroll. And scroll over here too. Let's see here. I have a Alexis on video. So Alexis, if you'll message me, private message me your contact information, I will get that over to Miss Victoria. And back to you, Miss Corey.
Awesome. So we kind of touched about, so you mentioned patterns. So real quickly, what do you think about patterns on figure suits?
I think patterns are fine on figure suits. I've seen just some gorgeous suits out there. And I really like the different patterns. I think sometimes they can be too much. And I think Gary says this, he's mentioned it to me, like if it's overly stoned, I think with those clearer crystals, you know, the ones that just make you look like a disco ball, like the light shines so much, which is really pretty, but it almost is blinding. Like, I think that becomes the issue on figure suits more often than not, is some people get all of those really light or those clear stones, and it's like the light just reflects and it's almost hard to see their physique. It's kind of distracting. But otherwise, I think that patterns are great on figure suits. Figure and physique have always worn suits that have some kind of pattern on them. And it's changed over the years, you know, from bigger stones now to rhinestones that are, you know, almost like artwork on some of these suits. But I really like it. I don't have any issue with that.
Awesome. Question about bikini. Does it help your score showing both sides in your front pose?
No. If you have two different poses that look great, go ahead and do it. I refer to Jen Ronziti sometimes for her posing, because she can hit the side pose and also the more traditional front pose in bikini, and it looks good. But if you only have one good side, stick to that. Do not show us something that isn't 100% perfect just because you feel like you have to do a variety. Kind of a funny little story about myself. We introduced presentations at Junior USA's. It happened to be the year that I was competing there, and they told us backstage. And none of us had any idea what a presentation was. And I knew I had two good poses, pretty much. Like, you had to do a front and a back, and I knew I had one good side pose. So I did my side pose, my front pose, my back pose, and that same side pose. And I did fine. And I actually did well in that show. And I just thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to do what I know is best, what I know I can nail, what are my absolute best shots, and go with that. I was not about to show anything that was not 100%, or that might show me in an unflattering light at all. And same goes for anyone else. I can remember a few times seeing a few competitors who do very few poses at all, but their physique is so great and those poses are so on. It's like, that's it. That's fine. That's all we needed to see. Like,
well,
they
with
look
that,
so good.
and two, we have somebody that just posted in about that. So how long is it acceptable? So this is coming from some of our newer competitors, I think, to get into a pose. So thinking about like women's physique, you know, even in figure, like how long is it okay to get into that transition, and what's too long and then you've missed your window?
I think that the transitions need to be pretty fluid, and you need to be able to just hit the pose. I feel like women's physique are pretty good. I have no problem with them doing something like with their hands, like before they hit a double bicep, you know, something graceful to get into it. I think that's totally fine in women's physique. And I don't really see them where they don't hit their poses quickly enough. Sometimes in figure, you will see girls who are maybe not as practiced with their poses. So they're kind of, you know, adjusting their shoulders a little bit. Like, do they have their back out all the way? And then they're like bending their knees. Like it's like a process to get in that pose. And you should be able to transition and then just hit it. Like, everything should be there. And you should be practiced enough to not have to kind of fidget around or take multiple steps to hit your pose. And I know that that's something that, you know, especially for newer competitors, that it can kind of trip you up on stage, you know, the first time you're up there and maybe you don't pull your back out and you hear your coach yell, you know, pull your back out. It's totally fine to reset and adjust, but just try to practice as much as you can so that you can hit the pose right all at once without making it a big process.
Well, and that leads into this next question. Kind of tell a little bit about the difference between what you would see on the amateur stage. And I'm thinking, given where this question is coming from, you know, bikini, as you come out and you do your presentation for bikini, men's physique, versus, you know, a lot of competitors are putting together a presentation based on what they saw the pros do. which are very,
Right.
very different. So if you could tack just a couple tips about, amateur, national, and pro level, and what that presentation should really be like, I think that would be helpful.
Sure. Really on the amateur level, it should just be front, back, front, and it's actually for men's physique, it's for bikini. It should just be that. You can have transitions. Of course, you're not just going to spin all the way around to the back. You kind of have like your front pose, your transition, your back pose, your transition, and then your front pose, and you're off. And they will tell you 10 seconds. You've got about 10 seconds to do your routine. When you get to the national stage, people do take a little bit longer, but still with these bigger shows, like they are trying to make sure that the routines are kept to a reasonable time frame. I think a few years ago, we used to have people who would walk to the back of the stage, hit a pose and walk back. I'm starting to not even see that anymore on the national level, just because things are moving so quickly. I would say make sure you just focus on those few poses that you need, like your front and your back pose, and then your transitions and your walk. And that's good enough. Like, as long as you're confident up there and you can execute those poses well, you don't need to be up there forever. As Sandy says, the longer you're up there, the more time we have to look for your faults. So just hit your best poses and just be done with it. Now on the pro level, you guys will see that they have a lot more time, and some of them really do use it. They will, walk front and back. That's the right that they've earned as a pro. They're usually, the marquee event of any, pro show. People come to see bikini. And so they have a little bit more leeway with what they do. I always tell people, if you're going to look at a pro routine for ideas, maybe look at it for poses, or maybe the vibe that person has. Like, does that person pose, in a more classy way, or do they seem to have your same personality? But don't do it pose for pose, because you'll be booted off that amateur stage before you even get a quarter of the way through it. So definitely don't think that you're going to have that much time on stage.
Well, and there's a couple questions coming in, and I will remind everybody, if you joined the live late, go back and watch the very beginning. The replay will be out there because we went through each division. So a few of these questions will have been answered if you actually watched from the very beginning. Okay, question. So pro cut bottoms, who wears pro cut bottoms?
Oh my gosh. Well, the pros can wear pro cut bottoms. Oh, this always just comes up.
So here's the question. Here's the actual question. I'll read it to you. Can we wear a bikini division suit with the pro cut bottoms for wellness?
You could, as long as the coverage is still sufficient. Like, the pro cut thing is, I'm sure you guys all saw, like on social media, that was a big thing a couple of years ago, because some of the suit makers were selling suits under that name and they were really just too small. The coverage was too small. I have seen some though with just, they're called pro cuts, and the coverage is fine, especially if she's a smaller girl. It's got enough coverage and it's acceptable. And yeah, that would be totally fine for wellness.
And then another question. So I'm going to read it directly because this will be easier. For someone that's new to competing, but competing in wellness, do you think they should do a couple local shows in wellness before attempting to do one of the bigger national shows like people often do in bikini? Or is it acceptable to try the bigger shows for wellness instead of the amateur shows since it's so new?
That's a great question, because it is a brand new category. I think just to prepare yourself, it's good to compete on the local level. That's kind of the way things have been set up as far as progressions for everybody. It's to have you guys compete on the local level at first and then progress to the national level. It gets you used to the stage. It's a more intimate setting. It's not as, I would say, not as intimidating as the local or the national level can be. I think it's definitely good to get a few shows under your belt on the local level, get some good feedback. There's great judges on the local level that'll maybe give you some pointers for that national stage, because there are pro cards at stake, and maybe you have a great physique and maybe you could actually snag one of those pro cards. And getting good feedback ahead of time for some things that maybe you could tweak for that national debut, I think would be really helpful.
So I know we're getting really close to another giveaway. So let's do that giveaway because this will lead in perfectly. We've got some questions on makeup and jewelry. So I think there's a jewelry one coming up, right,
Yes.
Victoria? Awesome.
Yes. I have a set right over here. I'll show you.
Ooh, that's pretty.
And the earrings are right over there. And it also comes with a discount, 10% off for a cookie.
It's Corey's
So,
favorite.
Yep, Corey.
Yep, it's Corey's favorite. So now we get to choose between 123. And this time I'm gonna ask Becky to pick a number.
84.
84. Let's see here. Now I numbered everybody, so we're doing good here. Audra. Audra
Oh
Harris.
yeah, I see she's right there. I see her.
Audra, you need to send me your information on the chat in Messenger, and we will get that over to Victoria. And Corey, back to you guys.
Okay, so if you could touch on hair, makeup, its importance. We've had everyone from our bodybuilders, women's physique competitors asking. I think we know in figure and bikini that we're definitely doing hair and makeup, but just some simple tips. And then is there anything with hair and makeup that is, and even jewelry, that is just a don't do it because it's just like something they might not think about, but just you've seen judging and been like, oh, we need to change that.
Well, I think the classic stuff that people have heard, and maybe there's some new competitors on here who haven't, but updos are generally a no-no. Tiaras, chokers, any kind of bracelet that has anything dangling off of it, ankle bracelets, that stuff just tends to be distracting more than anything. And in general, jewelry should just be tasteful, simple. It's an accent, but it shouldn't be what I'm looking at ultimately. It should just give the overall, add to the overall presence that you have on stage and kind of add to the look of like health and femininity. And that's kind of what I tell people about hair and makeup. There are several tricks that you can do to, make yourself look healthy and vibrant and feminine on stage. Hair is one of them. That's why a lot of people wear their hair down and long. There are athletes though who compete with short hair. There's been a few bikini pros who have won shows with short hair. You have to be 100% on point with your body if that's the case, because there's nothing to hide behind. But long hair, just in general, I think subconsciously gives kind of a feminine impression. And for bodybuilders or women's physique, like they diet down really hard, and sometimes their faces get a little lean, and they have to in order to get in that kind of incredible shape. Sometimes having longer hair and hair that's well styled and just healthy looking can soften that a little bit. I can remember competing with Adela Garcia, who actually is back in the Olympia this year. Her face gets a little bit drawn when she diets down, and I happen to be getting makeup done at the same time as her. And sometimes makeup artists will, try to highlight or contour in a way that makes your face look fuller. Just because it looks a little bit less drawn on stage, a healthy look is a face that isn't super etched in. And so there's some makeup tricks that you can do. I stink at makeup, so if you need to get with a makeup artist, do not feel bad. I think most people do. That takes a lot of stress off of me by having my makeup done, and they know what stage makeup needs to look like. If you want to try it yourself, like the idea is not to look like a clown. It is, of course, to enhance your own features, because it's the same reason we wear a tan. Those stage lights completely wash us out. You need to make sure your eyebrows show, your eyelashes, your lips, like the shape of your face shows. Some people are great at it. If not, though, I would reach out to somebody who is actually doing makeup, maybe at the show, who's experienced in the industry. You can't just go to the MAC counter and have them do your makeup, because matching it to the tan, which it does have to match somewhat. You don't want your face to be dark and muddy, but your foundation has to somehow match the rest of your body. And that's not something that just the average makeup artist is going to know. So kind of think about that ahead of time and plan for that. And just really think about what a healthy fit overall appearance would be. That's what we're going for here. That's why we have the tan. That's why we have, you know, the flattering suits, the makeup, all of that. And I think if you, especially like looking at the Arnold winners and stuff, I really think that they embodied that. That's like a fit, feminine look, and that's what you're going for.
And for all divisions, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
With that, talking about the jewelry, we're seeing the fully crystallized heels a lot more. How do you feel about those versus the plain heels?
I know that I don't like them. I like the plain heels. I'm certainly not going to score somebody down because they wear different shoes. I've heard some judges say they don't mind them at all. I've seen a few that are really, really heavily stoned and they really shine a lot. I would say definitely stay away from those. I think clear heels are the easiest and your best bet. The idea of wearing heels in the first place was just kind of to position our bodies in a flattering way that best shows off our physique. It wasn't really meant to be an accessory, so to speak. I think a little bit of rhinestoning is fine, but again, I would not go super heavy on it. A, I'm sure it's more expensive, and B, it can be a little bit distracting. And I've had this question again recently. I would not wear a platform on the front of your shoe. Like a lot of girls will try to do that. I think I would fall right off of those things. You're already in like 4 or 5 inch heels. If you add another like inch or two to the front of it, just makes it really hard to walk. So I would avoid that as well.
And we have a question for ankle strap or no strap. I have a feeling I know exactly what you're going to say. It's all about personal preference.
Totally is. I think I wore the ankle strap for a long time. I kind of moved to no ankle strap later on in my competing, just because I like to not put on my shoes until the last minute. And when you're getting yourself glued in, like if you have to have your suit glued down, if you have to bend down to buckle your shoe, you might pop your bikini bite off. So you kind of have to have your shoes on by the time you're getting like your bikini bite done and stuff. And so for me, I would get all that done and just kind of walk around with my shoes in my hand so that I could stay off of my feet as long as possible. Because you guys know in those really huge shows, you can be standing in your heels for a long time and your feet start to go numb and all of that. So I always avoided putting them on till the last minute, and the slip-ons are easier for that.
I'm going to fire a couple quick questions at you because I think these should be easy to answer as we're getting close to that time. Figure competitor saying she has heard that in figure you should do waves and curls in your hair versus going straight.
No, I don't think there's any preference. Whatever looks best on you, whatever looks healthy and whatever looks best on you. I don't have a preference one way or another. And
hair, can hair be placed in front in your front pose, or should it be in the back away from your shoulders?
For figure, it definitely should be off your shoulders because we're looking at symmetry and everything there. I think it's fine to have it on your shoulder in bikini. It just depends how it looks. Is it covering you up too much? Like, can we see your shape? If it's covering your shape up, then maybe you'd want to move it. I see a lot of girls start with it there and then they'll like move it off their shoulder, and that's fine.
Pumping up body parts, yes or no?
Well, if you're figure and women's physique and bodybuilding, obviously you're going to do it. I think bikini does it as well. I didn't because I kind of competed in a time where I was a little bit more muscular. I would say though, don't pump up your legs. That's my biggest tip to you guys. I see people doing squats and lunges, and that just increases blood flow and increases inflammation in your legs and any kind of tightness or separation you might have. Not that it's, super required for bikini, but even for figure, like you don't want to blur those lines. That's why you stay off your feet. That's why you see bodybuilders laying on their backs with their feet in the air, because they're trying to reduce that kind of inflammation. Some girls will do like kickbacks or whatever, bikini girls, to like pump their glutes a little bit. I think that's totally fine. But I wouldn't be doing lunges or squats or anything really. You shouldn't need to do anything really for your abs or your legs. So I would avoid that.
Well, I'm talking about those legs and those toes. What about nail color, pedicures, and manicures?
Used to be all French manicures because those are pretty inconspicuous. I think you can do pretty much what you want. Just make sure they're not distracting. Like like if you have really long fingernails, make sure it's a pretty neutral color. I like nothing super long and super dark where we're looking at your hands. Again, we shouldn't be looking at one body part or like your shoes or your jewelry or stuff like that. We should be looking at the overall package. So just nothing distracting.
Your thought process, do you think the shows at the end of this season are going to be a lot bigger than they were probably last year due to the fact that we're holding off and starting the season so late?
I do think so. I think it's going to be a really interesting season because it is going to be so backloaded. Honestly, I hope that they're bigger. I hope that everybody gets out there and competes. And my theory, especially as soon as we're able to start again, I hope people just get back on stage. Like, I don't care if you're 80%, 90%, or 100%. I think you need to get back out there. This has been so hard for everyone, just like the uncertainty and, all of us kind of being secluded. Like, one reason I was excited to do this call is because we all get to talk about what we love and kind of communicate and, share each other's passion. And I really feel like the first few shows are going to be that. Like, even if you get dead last, I personally would be so excited to be back on that stage and be like, yes, I'm finally like back on track and something's happening. And I feel like that's going to be the vibe at the shows. And I hope people get out there for that and just kind of look at it from a different perspective, appreciate this as something that can easily be taken from all of us. You never know what's going on in the world. And maybe this is just a time for us to get out there and really celebrate that we actually can compete and we can be part of these really cool events. So I hope they'll be huge because I think that'll be even more fun for everyone. And I think everyone will fall in love with the sport even more with that much involvement.
I think that's great. I think that's great advice. For those of you guys that have tuned in later, just remember, we want to, So You Want to Compete, it has a private group that goes with it. All of the people here that, your hosts are part of that So You Want to Compete group. It is a great space to ask questions. So if you've got questions, a lot of the local promoters are in there. A lot of the judges are in there. Lots of trainers and coaches are in there. So it's really a safe space for people to ask questions. So, if you've got more questions, we tried asking all the questions that we saw in the chat. But if you didn't get your question answered, please post it in there. We'll find out the answers. Stacia and I are both promoters. We talk to Gary Udit very often in terms of any questions that we can't answer. We will definitely recommend you to the right people. So as we get ready to wrap this up, we just want to say thank you for all of the questions that are here. If you missed it, next week we're going to have Tony Roberts, and Victoria has let us know that she is going to be bringing on some men's pros to help with that. So the men are up next week. And so this is all for you guys next week. And then the following week, we're going to have Mike Davies on. He's going to be talking about some of those tips. I think it's great. Look at all the posts out there. I see the competitors posting that they are still getting ready for shows. They've got, backyard workouts. They've got parking lot workouts. That was one of the reasons why we definitely wanted Mike, is how do you stay in the midst of staying home and not interacting with people? How do you get back on stage in those shows May 23rd when they show up? So I think we've got one last big, great giveaway that's going to go along with helping with your prep.
Yes, Blackstone Labs to help you stay on track. I started recently using it and really enjoying, and we can choose whoever's next.
So this time, Miss Victoria, you get to choose a number between 1 and 110.
75.
75. Okay, let me find that number there. And that goes to a Facebook viewer, Hannah Rose. So Hannah, if you message me your contact information, I will make sure we get you your Blackstone Labs prize. So I think that puts us at 2 minutes to the hour. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Becky, for joining us and giving us that wealth of information. I will be taking the next few hours to fix this and get it on YouTube so that it can be reviewed and viewed over and over and over again as many times as people would like. And we will be doing this again going forward every Saturday at noon. Victoria is responsible for making sure we've got our sponsors on board. So if you want to either come on as a guest or you have some sponsor information that you would like to share, please make sure you contact us. And everybody, We appreciate this so much that we love being able to share, like Becky said earlier, we love being able to share what our passion. And even though we're kind of in a limited fashion right now, this is one of the best ways we can do that. So we will sign off and say, see you guys next weekend, and hope everybody stays safe.
Thank you,
Bye.
Becky.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.